The car alarm's distant wail barely registered as Gabriel Turner fumbled with his shopping cart, attempting to navigate the crowded discount store while keeping his 6-year-old daughter Lily from wandering off. A single father working 2 jobs, Gabriel's Saturday shopping trips were carefully budgeted affairs of counting coupons and mental math. Today, his mental calculations kept getting interrupted by Lily's excited chatter about the birthday party she'd been invited to next weekend, a party that required a gift he wasn't sure he could afford. "Daddy, can we look at the toys now?" Lily tugged at his worn flannel shirt, her eyes wide with hope. "I promised Zoe I'd get her something pretty." Gabriel checked his watch, an old Timex his father had given him before passing, and sighed. "Just for a few minutes, sweetheart. We still need to grab groceries, and I have to be at work by 4. The landscaping company he worked for on weekends paid better than his weekday job at the hardware store, but neither offered much flexibility. As they rounded the corner toward the toy aisle, Gabriel noticed a woman being cornered by an aggressive salesman near the electronics section. She was dressed simply in jeans and a light sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Nothing about her screamed wealth, but something in her demeanor caught Gabriel's attention. She kept politely trying to step away, but the salesman, slick in his branded polo shirt, continued blocking her path while gesturing wildly at what appeared to be an overpriced vacuum cleaner. "I'm really not interested," she said, her voice firm but strained. "But madam, this is a limited time offer. The Vacu Max 3000 is revolutionizing home cleaning. I can't guarantee this price tomorrow," the salesman persisted, stepping closer. Gabriel recognized the discomfort in her expression immediately. Without thinking twice, he steered his cart toward them, Lily skipping alongside him. "There you are," he called out cheerfully to the woman. "Sorry I'm late. Lily wanted to check out the toy section before we met up." He turned to the salesman with a friendly but decisive smile. "Thanks for keeping my friend company, but we've got to get going, tight schedule today." The woman's eyes widened momentarily before understanding flashed across her face. "Oh. Yes, I was just waiting for you," she said, relief evident in her voice as she stepped toward Gabriel and away from the pushy salesman. The salesman looked between them, suspicion crossing his features before deflating into resignation. "Well, if you change your mind about the Vacu Max, I'll be here until 6, he said, reluctantly retreating. Once he was out of earshot, the woman turned to Gabriel with a genuine smile. "Thank you so much." He wouldn't take no for an answer. "Some people don't understand boundaries," Gabriel replied with a shrug. "I'm Gabriel, by the way, Gabriel Turner, and this is my daughter, Lily." "Hi," Lily waved enthusiastically. "We're buying a birthday present for my friend Zoe." The woman crouched down to Lily's level. "That sounds very important. I'm Grace Zimmerman. It's lovely to meet you both." "Are you shopping for toys too?" Lily asked, always quick to make friends. Grace smiled. "Not today, but I could use some advice on what 6-year-olds like these days. Would you mind if I tag along?" Gabriel found himself nodding before he could overthink it. There was something approachable about Grace, despite her composed demeanor. As they walked toward the toy section, he noticed subtle details he'd missed. Initially, the quality of her seemingly simple clothes, the discreet watch that probably cost more than his monthly rent, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. In the toy aisle, Lily became their enthusiastic guide, pointing out various dolls and craft kits while Grace listened attentively, asking questions that made Lily beam with importance. Gabriel hung back slightly, watching their interaction with a smile while also mentally calculating how much he could realistically spend on Zoe's gift. "What do you think of this one?" Grace asked, holding up a moderately priced arts and crafts kit. "It has everything to make friendship bracelets." Lily's eyes widened. "Zoe loves making things. That's perfect." Gabriel checked the price tag and winced internally. It was about $15 more than he'd budgeted. "Maybe we should look at some other options too, Lil," he suggested gently. Grace observed the exchange quietly, then casually mentioned, "You know, I think this is on sale today. I saw a sign near the front that this brand is 20% off." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "Really? I didn't notice that." "Corporate marketing strategy," Grace said with a knowing smile. "They don't advertise it well because they hope people will pay full price." When they reached the checkout, Gabriel was pleasantly surprised to find that the craft kit was indeed on sale, even more than Grace had suggested. As the cashier rang up their items, Gabriel noticed Grace purchasing only a small pack of hair ties. "Just needed an excuse to escape that salesman," she explained with a laugh when she caught his questioning look. Outside the store, Gabriel expected they would part ways, but Grace lingered. "I feel like I should thank you properly for your rescue operation. Could I buy you two lunch? There's a nice diner across the street." Gabriel hesitated. Pride made him want to decline, but Lily was already bouncing with excitement. "We don't want to impose on your day," he said carefully. "You'd actually be doing me a favor," Grace insisted. "I'm new to town and don't know many people yet. It gets lonely eating alone all the time." The diner was a local favorite, nothing fancy, just good food at reasonable prices. Gabriel chose it frequently on the rare occasions he could afford to eat out with Lily. As they settled into a booth, Lily immediately reached for the kids' menu and crayons offered by the waitress. "So what brings you to Riverside?" Gabriel asked as they browsed their menus. "Work," Grace answered. "I'm overseeing a development project. My company is renovating the old mill complex near the river into mixed-use spaces, apartments, offices, some retail." "The Porter Mill property, that's been sitting empty for years," Grace nodded. "We specialize in revitalizing historic properties. I'll be here for at least a year getting everything set up." "Daddy fixes things too," Lily interjected. "He can fix anything. He even fixed Mrs. Henderson's sink when it was making funny noises." Gabriel felt his cheeks warm. "I work at Anderson's Hardware during the week. You pick up a few skills here and there." Their conversation flowed easily through lunch. Gabriel learned that Grace had grown up in Chicago, graduated from Stanford, and traveled extensively for work. He shared stories about raising Lily after his wife had left when their daughter was just 2, his juggling of jobs to make ends meet, and his dreams of one day starting his own home repair business. What struck Gabriel most was how genuinely interested Grace seemed in their lives. She asked Lily about school and listened intently to Gabriel's explanation of the best methods for restoring old woodwork. There was none of the condescension he sometimes encountered from more affluent customers at the hardware store. When the check arrived, Grace smoothly picked it up despite Gabriel's protest. "Please, I insist. This is the best conversation I've had since moving here." As they walked out of the diner, Lily spotted an ice cream shop across the street and looked up hopefully. Before Gabriel could gently explain that ice cream wasn't in today's budget, Grace suggested, "How about dessert? I think we all deserve a treat." Gabriel checked his watch and realized he needed to get home soon to prepare for his evening landscaping job. "Actually, we should probably head home." "I've got work later." "On a Saturday?" Grace asked. "I do landscaping on weekends. The neighbor watches Lily for me," he explained, trying to keep his tone matter-of-fact rather than apologetic. Something shifted in Grace's expression, not pity, but perhaps a deeper understanding. "Of course. But maybe we could do this again sometime. I really enjoyed meeting you both." Before Gabriel could respond, Lily exclaimed, "Yes, can we, Daddy? I like Grace." Gabriel found himself smiling. "We'd like that." They exchanged phone numbers, and as Gabriel drove home in his aging pickup truck, he tried not to overthink the encounter. Women like Grace, educated, sophisticated, clearly successful, didn't typically spend time with struggling single fathers. Yet there had been something so genuine about her interest that he couldn't dismiss it as mere politeness. 3 days later, Grace called. "There's a community fair in the park this Saturday. I wondered if you and Lily might want to join me." Gabriel hesitated. "I usually work Saturdays." Oh, Grace said, disappointment evident in her voice. Of course I understand. But, Gabriel continued, surprising himself, I could ask to switch shifts this once. Lily would love the fare. The weekend fare turned into dinner the following week, which led to Grace joining them for a movie night at their modest apartment. Each time they met, Gabriel waited for the moment when Grace would realize they came from different worlds and make a graceful exit from their lives. But that moment never came. Instead, Grace fit herself into their routine with remarkable ease. She showed up with books Lily might enjoy, brought takeout on evenings when Gabriel worked late, and never made him feel inadequate when he couldn't reciprocate her generosity. You know, Gabriel said one evening as they sat on his small balcony after Lily had gone to bed, you never really explained what your position is at this development company. Grace took a sip of her coffee. I oversee projects, make sure they align with our vision, handle some of the more complex negotiations. Must be a lot of responsibility, he commented. She nodded. It is, but I enjoy solving problems, seeing potential where others might not. What Grace didn't mention was that the company was actually Zimmerman Enterprises, and she wasn't merely overseeing the project, she owned the entire corporation. The truth hovered on the tip of her tongue many times, but she found herself reluctant to change the dynamic between them. With Gabriel, she was just Grace, not Grace Zimmerman, the billionaire CEO whose name regularly appeared in business magazines. It had been refreshing, almost intoxicating, to be valued for her company rather than her wealth. When Gabriel looked at her, she saw admiration for her ideas, not her bank account. When he insisted on cooking dinner for her instead of going to expensive restaurants, she recognized it as pride, not frugality. A month into their friendship, Gabriel received devastating news. The landscaping company he worked for was closing, and his weekend income would disappear. The same day, his landlord informed him that rent would increase by 20% when his lease renewed in 2 months. When Grace arrived at his apartment that evening with Thai food, now a Friday tradition, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Lily was unusually quiet, picking at her pad thai instead of chattering about school. What's going on? Grace asked gently after Lily had been excused to play in her room. Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Grace had come to recognize as a sign of his stress. Just some work and apartment stuff. Nothing I can't figure out. Gabriel, she said softly, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Talk to me. He exhaled deeply before explaining the situation. I'll find another weekend job, maybe pick up extra shifts at the hardware store, and there might be cheaper apartments across town. Grace felt her heart twist. The solution seemed so simple to her, she could write a check that would solve all his problems instantly. But she understood Gabriel well enough now to know he would never accept such help. The mill renovation, she said suddenly. We're going to need a property manager once construction is further along. Someone who understands maintenance, can anticipate issues before they become problems. It would be a full-time position with benefits. Gabriel looked up, surprise written across his features. Are you suggesting that you'd be perfect for the role? Yes. The hours would be regular, 9 to 5 weekdays, no more juggling 2 jobs or working weekends. I don't have experience managing large properties, he protested, but you have practical knowledge most managers lack. You understand how buildings work, how to maintain them properly. The rest can be learned. She leaned forward. Just think about it. I could arrange an interview with our HR team. Gabriel remained quiet for a long moment. This isn't charity, is it, Grace? She met his eyes directly. I would never insult you that way. This is business. The project needs someone with your skills. The fact that I also care about you and Lily is separate. His expression softened. You care about us. Grace felt heat rise to her cheeks. Over the past month, her feelings for Gabriel had evolved far beyond friendship. She admired his integrity, his devotion to Lily, his resilience in the face of challenges. She found herself thinking about him throughout her days, looking forward to their time together more than any other aspect of her life. Yes, she admitted quietly. Very much. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken possibilities. Gabriel reached across the table and took her hand in his. We care about you too, more than I've been willing to admit, even to myself. Their first kiss came later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed. It was tentative at first, then deepening with a passion that surprised them both. When they finally pulled apart, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. I need to be honest with you, he whispered. I can't offer you much. My life is complicated, always one emergency away from falling apart. You deserve, don't tell me what I deserve, Grace interrupted gently. Let me decide that for myself. 2 weeks later, Gabriel started his new position as the future property manager of the mill renovation. The job paid nearly twice what he'd been making at his 2 previous jobs combined, with health insurance that finally allowed him to take Lily to the dentist for a checkup she'd been needing. As they grew closer, Grace knew she couldn't keep her full identity secret much longer. The opportunity to tell him came unexpectedly when they were visiting the mill construction site on a Sunday afternoon. Gabriel had brought Lily, wanting to show her where he would be working, and Grace had arranged for the foreman to give them a private tour. This is going to be amazing, Gabriel said, looking up at the exposed beams of the historic mill. You can really see the potential now that they've cleared out all the old machinery. The foreman nodded. Miss Zimmerman has quite the vision. Most developers would have torn it down, but she insisted on preserving the original structure. Gabriel glanced at Grace, confusion crossing his features. Miss Zimmerman, the foreman looked between them awkwardly. Yes, Grace Zimmerman, the owner. A heavy silence fell over the group. Grace felt her heart racing as Gabriel's expression shifted from confusion to realization. Maybe I should continue the tour later, the foreman suggested, backing away slowly. Once they were alone, Gabriel turned to Grace. The owner? You own the development company? Grace took a deep breath. I own Zimmerman Enterprises, all of it. The development company is just one division. Zimmerman Enterprises, he repeated slowly. The Zimmerman Enterprises that's on the Fortune 500 list. That has buildings with its name on them in every major city, she nodded, watching his face carefully. I should have told you sooner. At first, it was just nice to be treated like a normal person, not a bank account. Then, as we got closer, I was afraid the truth would change everything between us. Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, turning away to look out the large windows overlooking the river. Lily had wandered to a safe distance, examining the architectural drawings posted on a temporary wall. Were you ever going to tell me? He asked quietly. Yes, Grace answered immediately. I've been trying to find the right moment. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. He was quiet for so long that Grace began to fear the worst. When he finally turned back to her, his expression was unreadable. The job offer was that real. Or was it just a way to help me without making it obvious? Grace stepped closer, needing him to see the truth in her eyes. The job is absolutely real. We need someone like you. I would never use my company to manipulate you, Gabriel. And us? He asked, his voice catching slightly. Was that real? It's the most real thing in my life, she whispered. Money changes how people see me, how they act around me. But with you and Lily, I found something genuine. I found home. Gabriel was silent for a moment, processing. I need some time to think about all this. Grace nodded, heart sinking. I understand. For 3 days, Grace heard nothing from Gabriel. She threw herself into work, trying not to check her phone every 5 minutes or drive past his apartment. On the 4th day, just as she was convincing herself it was truly over, her office phone rang. Grace Zimmerman's office. Her assistant answered before transferring the call. Grace speaking. It's Gabriel. Can we talk? They met at a small park near the river, neutral ground away from both his apartment and her temporary office. Grace arrived first, sitting nervously on a bench, watching children play on the swings. When Gabriel approached, he wasn't alone. Lily ran ahead, throwing herself into Grace's arms with uninhibited affection. "Grace, I missed you. Daddy said we needed thinking time, but I was done thinking ages ago." Grace hugged her tightly, looking over the child's head at Gabriel, who stood watching them with a soft expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Lily, why don't you play on the swings for a bit while Grace and I talk?" Gabriel suggested. Once Lily was happily swinging, Gabriel sat beside Grace on the bench. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "And?" Grace asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm still the same person I was last week," he began. "Still a single dad trying to do right by his daughter. Still someone who fixes things for a living. Learning about your wealth doesn't change who I am." "It doesn't change how I feel about you either," Grace said softly. "I know," Gabriel nodded. "That's what I realized. In all the time we've spent together, you've never once made me feel less than. You sit at my kitchen table, eating takeout from paper containers like it's the most natural thing in the world. You listen to Lily's stories with genuine interest. You see us really see us." Hope bloomed in Grace's chest. "So where does this leave us?" Gabriel turned to fully face her, taking her hands in his. "I'm in love with you, Grace. Not your money, not your company, you. The woman who needed rescuing from a pushy salesman. The woman who colors with Lily for hours. The woman who gets excited about historic buildings and community projects." Tears pricked at Grace's eyes. "I love you too, both of you, more than I thought possible." Their kiss was witnessed only by a few passing joggers and Lily, who abandoned her swing to run over and throw her arms around both of them. "Does this mean Grace is staying?" she asked hopefully. Gabriel looked at Grace, the question reflected in his eyes. "Yes," Grace answered, looking at them both. "I'm staying." The following months brought adjustments for everyone. Gabriel excelled in his new position, bringing practical knowledge that impressed even the most experienced contractors. Grace began spending more time in Riverside, delegating some of her responsibilities at headquarters to focus on the mill project and her new family. They decided to take things slowly, with Grace maintaining her separate residence while spending most evenings at Gabriel's apartment. By the time Gabriel's lease came up for renewal, they had made a decision. "What if we built something?" Grace suggested one evening. "Not a mansion or anything ostentatious, but a home designed specifically for us." Gabriel had been hesitant at first, uncomfortable with the idea of Grace funding such a substantial purchase. Their compromise was a partnership. Gabriel would oversee the entire construction process, contributing his expertise and labor where appropriate, while Grace would handle the financial aspects. They found a beautiful piece of land just outside town, with views of the river and enough space for Lily to play outdoors. The house they designed together was modest by Grace's standards, but spacious compared to Gabriel's apartment. 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen where they could cook together, and a workshop for Gabriel's woodworking projects. As construction began on their home, another transformation was taking place downtown. The mill renovation progressed rapidly, with Gabriel's practical insights preventing numerous potential issues before they arose. When the first phase opened a combination of affordable apartments and small business spaces, the entire community celebrated. At the grand opening ceremony, Grace stood at the podium, Gabriel and Lily beside her. "This project represents what's possible when we honor our past while building for the future," she told the gathered crowd. "When we first purchased this property, many advised us to demolish it and start fresh. But sometimes, the strongest foundations are the ones that have already weathered storms." Her eyes met Gabriel's, and the parallel to their relationship wasn't lost on either of them. That night, after the celebrations had ended and Lily was asleep in her bed, Gabriel and Grace stood on the balcony of Grace's temporary apartment, overlooking the illuminated mill complex. "I have something for you," Gabriel said, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket. "I made it myself." Grace opened it to find a ring nestled inside a simple but elegant design with a single diamond set in a band of polished wood inlaid with gold. "The wood is from the mill," Gabriel explained. "Salvaged from one of the support beams we had to replace. The foreman saved it for me." Tears filled Grace's eyes as Gabriel knelt before her. "Grace Zimmerman, you came into our lives by chance, but I want to spend the rest of my days with you by choice. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. 1,000 times yes. They married the following spring in a ceremony that balanced Grace's resources with Gabriel's sensibilities, elegant, but not extravagant, held in the community garden beside the renovated mill. Lily, serving as flower girl, beamed with pride as she watched her father and the woman who had become her second mother exchange vows. "You rescued me that day in the store," Grace said in her vows, "not just from a pushy salesman, but from a life where wealth had become a barrier rather than a blessing. You showed me what really matters. And you showed me that accepting help doesn't diminish strength," Gabriel responded. "That partnership means supporting each other in whatever ways we can." Their honeymoon was a 2-week stay at a private villa in Greece, Grace's choice, though Gabriel had initially suggested something more modest. "Just this once," he'd conceded with a smile. "Let's be extravagant." Upon their return, they moved into their newly completed home. Gabriel had insisted on carrying both Grace and Lily over the threshold, resulting in a fit of giggles as he pretended to struggle with their combined weight. Life settled into a rhythm that honored both their backgrounds. Gabriel continued managing the mill property while starting a small furniture restoration business on the side. Grace divided her time between running Zimmerman Enterprises and developing a foundation focused on revitalizing struggling communities. 1 year after their wedding, they added to their family with the birth of twins, a boy and a girl who inherited Grace's dark hair and Gabriel's thoughtful expression. Lily embraced her role as big sister with enthusiasm, reading to the babies and helping whenever she could. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Gabriel and Grace often sat on their porch swing, looking out at the river. "Do you ever think about that day in the store?" Gabriel asked one such evening. "How different our lives might be if I hadn't noticed that salesman bothering you." Grace rested her head on his shoulder. "I prefer to think it was inevitable, that somehow we would have found each other anyway." "A billionaire and a handyman," he mused, still sometimes amazed by the unlikelihood of their match. "No," Grace corrected gently. "Just 2 people who saw past appearances to what really mattered." Gabriel pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I love you, Grace Turner." She smiled at the name she had happily taken. "And I love you, Gabriel Turner, every ordinary, extraordinary day with you." As the river flowed steadily past their home, they remained on the porch long into the evening, talking of their children's futures, their next community project, and all the ordinary moments that made their extraordinary life together so precious.